Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for Better Call Saul Season 1, Episode 3, Nacho. And wow, I thought this show was going to be like a procedural show just because this episode at first seemed kind of filler to me. It just did because of what was going on in the episode. However, no, I am completely wrong. This show is not going to be like that at all, which I really like because I didn't want the show to go into a procedural format because I think the show had a lot of potential to start some storylines. And they start a lot of storylines in this episode. A lot of things start in this episode. We see a lot of things I definitely want to see. And I gotta say, this was by far the best episode of the season. And by far, this was the episode that made me love Better Call Saul. Like, seriously, after this episode, I love this show. And I think that if they keep putting out episodes like this season is gonna be amazing. But let's just get into this episode because it was fantastic. And basically, one of the things I was looking forward to most in the show is when they introduced Jimmy's character, Slippin' Jimmy. You know, when he talked about his early days of Slippin' Jimmy, I was hoping we get to see Slippin' Jimmy. And surely enough, in the first scene, there he is. We see a flashback of Chuck and Slippin' Jimmy. And basically, Chuck has come to visit Jimmy in prison, and he tells Chuck he's in a pickle and everything, and Chuck says he's facing a sex offender charge on top of all the other charges, and Jimmy says it was just it was a Chicago sunroof, and that doesn't make him a sex offender. And he tells Chuck to work his magic and make all this all go poof. And Chuck reminds Jimmy that he hasn't seen him for 5 years. Then he called and cried and begged their mom to get him to help. And Jimmy denies crying and asks if they can just talk strategy. He says he knows he's a lousy brother and a big screw up, and he says if he was a better person, he'd stop letting Chuck down and himself down. Chuck stands to go, and Jimmy begs him to help him get out of this, and he says his life is over if Chuck doesn't help him. Chuck tells him if he gets him out of this, he better not make a fool out of him. He says everything Jimmy is doing now is over, and Jimmy says to just tell him what to do and he'll do it, then begs Chuck for help, and Chuck nods, and it really made me kind of think something. I kind of feel like Chuck was in what Jimmy's job is right now, and then Jimmy took it from him. I really feel like something like that happened. Chuck totally seems like the kind of guy that would be very gullible with that, and I definitely feel like he would definitely do that to Chuck, because I mean, we know that Slip and Jimmy, clearly Chuck had a lot of hard times, and you can kind of see why. I mean, Chuck really had to do a lot for him, and I definitely feel like in that time period, Jimmy just did nothing for him. So we go back to our main time period, even though whenever a few years before Breaking Bad, of course, and Jimmy is pouring some booze into some cucumber water from the salon. He looks at Nacho's phone number on the matchbook, and he sighs and makes a call to Kim, who has a lot more to do in this episode, which I like seeing because I liked her character, and I want to see where they were going with her, and this is by far the most focus she's had of any episode. And she's asking him what time it is and asks how Chuck is, and he says Chuck is Chuck and just wanted to talk to her. She says she won't talk dirty to him, and he asks if that's the only reason she thinks he'd call. She says he can't talk dirty to her either, and says he's hanging up. Then he says he's just joking. He offers her a free pedicure and foot bath if she'll come over now, and then Jimmy says she's probably swamped with work with the country treasure case, and she says Craig Kettleman. And he says her dipwad boss stole him from Jimmy, and she says the Kettlemans made a choice. And Jimmy says the Donners made a choice to take a shortcut, and you see how that turned out. So Jimmy asks how the Kettlemans got away with it and where they stashed the cash. And of course, I really like this story because, of course, we saw Betsy and Craig Kettleman in the first episode. You know, they were turning out, Jimmy was telling them about that whole idea and everything, and they want nothing to do with them. So I was interested in seeing them again this episode because I knew they were going to come back because I heard that they were recurring characters. And I definitely want to see more of them, especially after this episode. I really do like their characters. And this was a really good scene. She asks what he means and why he would say that. And Jimmy says that he's drunk and is just thinking out loud, spinning thoughts. And basically, he talks about how his family could be in danger. And he says he'll see her at the courthouse tomorrow and ends the call. So, definitely, Jimmy is hiding something. I don't know what it is, but I definitely feel Jimmy's hiding something. What it is exactly, I can't tell you guys right now. But I definitely feel like he is hiding something. I just don't know what it is right now. We'll have to see what happens there. So Jimmy is saying to himself that he's not a hero, and he really is not. I mean, if there's anything I can say that Jimmy is not, he's not a hero. Definitely, he's not a hero. He had a lot of problems, and I think he's starting to realize how much he screwed his brother over. Because I definitely feel like he really screwed Chuck over. I mean, Chuck, look at Chuck now. He doesn't have much of a job. He's terrified of germs and, phone technology, things like that. That's why he wears a space blanket, and it's really interesting with Chuck, and I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen there. And I think a lot of people said they did not like Chuck's character, but I have to say, hang on one second, guys. After this episode, I have to say Chuck's character is really, really well written, definitely, and I'm really enjoying his character more than I thought I would. So he goes back to his tiny office, pulls out the sofa bed, and tries to sleep, and he can't. He gets up and unravels a roll of paper towels, takes the empty roll out into the salon, and he grabs a small piece of paper and heads out. He pops the paper over the roll, wears a rubber band around it, and he calls a third time and gets Craig. And he tries to tell him that he's in danger, but a guy can't understand Jimmy in his kazoo voice disguiser, and he says it's a warning and says they're coming for your money. So basically, he's covering up the fact that it's Jimmy. I thought that was smart overall, but they can't understand him and ask him to call him back, and they're not even listening to him because of the voice changer and everything. So he tosses the tube and says rapidly, "You're in danger. They're coming for your money." He hangs up, and Betsy and Craig are wondering who's coming. They go to look out the front door. They see a car out front, and at the courthouse, Jimmy's in the bathroom talking to Oakley to work a deal with while the guy takes, the guy is taking shit and everything, and he says it was a first offense, and Oakley shoots him down on every offer. He wants nothing to do with him, and it really goes back to the idea that Jimmy is not a trusted lawyer. No one really trusts Jimmy, and you can understand why. First of all, he has a criminal record, so that makes sense. And as I said, the show really is a character study of Jimmy. That's really what the show is. It's a character study and seeing if we really can trust him. In fact, one of the things that Vince Gilligan says that just because Saul was so likable in Breaking Bad doesn't mean that Jimmy is really the most trustworthy person. I have to say, after this episode, no, he's really not, definitely. And you can tell the whole episode that he's starting to realize that about himself. And Oakley says that the guy drove drunk into a shopping center and killed 3 people, and Jimmy's saying that's another guy, which kind of makes me think that Jimmy could have been that guy. I definitely feel like Jimmy is trying to cover himself up for something because he doesn't want people to think of him in that way anymore. He clearly doesn't want that Slip and Jimmy image in his head anymore. He wants it gone. He doesn't want people to think of him that way. But here's the thing. I definitely feel like Jimmy just is trying to cover himself up, and there's definitely something else that he's hiding. So Oakley tells him to start over, and Jimmy rants because he doesn't even know who he's talking about, and then Oakley takes the deal. And to me, I just feel like Jimmy was just trying to convince him to take the deal. I definitely feel like he was that guy, and that was really interesting. So Jimmy then gets a call from Kim, who asks again what he meant last night, because of course she had no idea when he was going on a whole tangent about his family and everything, and she asks why he's asking her this, and Mike demands $9, and Jimmy begs him to take the $5 and says that it's a serious emergency. And it was good to see Mike Ehrmantraut again. I definitely like seeing him. He promises to get him extra stickers if he will just let him go. And Mike says he's not making him do anything. He says those are just the rules. Jimmy reaches into the glass box and pushes the button to raise the arm, drives up yelling, "Screw you, geezer," pulls up in front of the Kettlemans and sees crime scene tape. And he gets out of the car, and Hamlin walks over to him and asks why he's there. And he says he was listening on the police scanner. And Hamlin says there's no business from there and says the family's missing door was open and the house is a mess. So Jimmy walks over to Kim, and she asks why he came there. And he says he's supporting her in her time of need, and he says he was just reading tea leaves the same way when he was approached them and suggested they'll get a lawyer. So Kim says that the 2 kids are missing too and asks if he would tell her and if he knew something. He says he doesn't really know and asks her to tell him if there's anything he can do. And she asks him to leave so she doesn't have to explain anything to Hamlin, and he drives away telling himself that it's all going to be okay. And I really do like this conflict, definitely with Kim. I mean, Kim clearly does not really agree with Jimmy, and I like seeing that with Kim. And he pulls up at a payphone. And also, my friend, Kane the Planet Kid of Awesome, he came up with a theory, for this episode that I actually find very interesting. We know that Jimmy is a sexual assault victim. So my friend kind of thinks that the reason Kim does not trust him is because he could have sexually assaulted her, which I can understand. I mean, not much is known about her character, not much is known about her background. We really don't know anything there is to know about Kim, so I can't say that I'm not going to say right now that he did that, but it definitely is a possibility, just because the way Kim reacts to him, and I'm definitely going to be studying her character. After that, I'm like, I need to study her character more, because, again, we don't know anything about Kim. First of all, Jimmy's never mentioned Kim in Breaking Bad. I don't think he did, at least, and, we don't know too much about her, so I definitely feel like that could be a possibility. So Jimmy drives away, telling himself it's all gonna be fine. He pulls up at a payphone, calls Nacho, but gives him a voicemail. And apparently the scene was reminiscent of a scene from Breaking Bad with Skyler when he talked to Skyler on the phone. I don't know. I was using the AMC Story Sync, which I actually recommend you guys use. It makes you more invested into the show. But I was using that, and they said that this is, like, reminiscent to a scene with Skylar. I don't know if it was, like, the same conversation or something, but I found that really interesting. So he calls Nacho, but gives him voicemail, and he says this is a party you spoke to the other day, and he wants to help him legally de-escalate the situation. He gives him the payphone number to call him back soon, and Jimmy paces and waits, and then he calls Nacho back and says he knows nothing, has spoken to no one, and there are no rats on the ship, but he wants to open a dialogue. He gives the payphone number again, because of course he told Nacho that he could trust him and that he was going to have his back, and of course Nacho told him that if he doesn't have his back and he crosses him, he's going to kill him. It's not going to end well for him. So he really has a lot of problems with Nacho, but I like the way he's handling it. And he calls again, says the time of the essence. He hangs up and says if he gets a busy to call back, then gives the number again. He makes call after call saying he can put the fire out and then he can help, and that's all a misunderstanding. He's just going on and on, basically. So the phone's ringing and he won't answer, but then the call abruptly ends, and Jimmy gets back in his car, but it won't crank. It's not starting up for some reason. So he sees someone walking towards him from each side, and he tries the car again, but it doesn't turn over. So he gets out and jogs behind a building, and the two guys converge and give chase, and they're cops, and they cuff him, and he says they're making a mistake and says he's a lawyer. They check his wallet and says it's his lawyer. They take him to the jail, and I thought that was really interesting when they said it's his lawyer. So is Jimmy under, like, a false identity or something? I really don't know. There's definitely something he's hiding. I don't know what it is, though. So they take him to the jail to see Nacho, and the cops tell him that he asked for him, and Jimmy goes in nervously. He says it was a smart move to ask for him because he's there to help. And Jimmy said the detectives were telling him some things that are problematic, and he says he's going to pitch it back to him. And he says a neighbor saw a suspicious van outside the Kettlemans 2 nights in a row and called the cops and gave them the plates, which led to Nacho. So he says the cops found blood on the floor and says they're calling in the FBI. And he tells him if he tells him where the family is and shows remorse, he can give him a good deal. So Nacho's glaring while he's talking, and Jimmy's asking if the family's okay. And Nacho just sits silently and that was really interesting. It definitely makes me think that, no, something bad's happening to his family. And Jimmy asks him to weigh in, and Nacho calls him a miserable piece of shit, and he says, you set me up. He said, you gave my score to another crew and set me up, and he is pissed off at Jimmy. And Jimmy's asking if he's had head trauma. Nacho says he was there and was casing it. Jimmy's just trying to cover up the fact that he betrayed him. He's just telling him maybe you have head trauma, you have no idea what you're talking about, and I like that Jimmy does that, but it doesn't always work. It worked with Tuco, but it's not going to work with Nacho. Nacho, honestly, I have to say, Tuco was very intimidating. Nacho's more intimidating because Nacho has a lot of negotiations and things like that. Definitely, I think Nacho's going to be a very interesting character. I definitely feel like he's going to be featured in the show more because, this episode's called Nacho. So Nacho says he was never in the house. Jimmy asked about the blood in the van. Nacho says it's just the skate rat twins. He says no one has been in the back of his van since then. And Jimmy says he doesn't understand. Nacho says he told his plan to just one person, that was Jimmy, and now he's in jail. So he's obviously pissed off at Jimmy because he trusted him, and now it put him in jail. So Jimmy says he tells him that he did not set him up and doesn't know anything about another crew. And Nacho says he doesn't even care, but says it will go bad for Jimmy if the cops poke around his life and business and find something. And he tells Jimmy to get him out of jail today or he'll pay. And I think that's reasonable overall. So Kim waits outside. Jimmy comes over and says hi to her. And Kim says that she didn't know he was representing the lead suspect. And Jimmy tells the cops that Nacho didn't do it. And Kim asks for just a minute, and the cops walk away. And Kim says that the family is in real danger and he doesn't have to stand behind privilege. She says his guy didn't do it, and Jimmy tells them to test the blood in the van and says it's not the Kettlemans. They ask who it is, and he says it's not. He thinks that, they tell him that they could take weeks, but Jimmy's saying that Nacho is innocent, and I like that he said that because he didn't, he is covering up what actually happened with Nacho, and he's staying true to him. So he has to see the crime scene, says they must be missing something, but Kim said it's a good idea. She says they should invite him to the house. They go to the house, and he sees photos of the kids, and Jimmy looks around. The cops ask what they missed. They poke around the bedrooms. Drawers are pulled out in the son's room and the daughter's room. He looks around some more. He tells Kim that Nacho didn't do this. He knows for a fact that it was not Nacho. He doesn't know who it is. He just knows that Nacho is not the suspect. So the cop says they know he was outside of the house the night before, and Jimmy looks around and asks where the doll is. He says there's a bunch of dog here, but no doll, and he says the little girl's holding the doll. He says dolls, and I thought this was an interesting quote, dolls and girls are together, which means the kid wasn't dragged out of the house, because, girls will always have their dolls with them. So obviously it had nothing to do with the kid being dragged out of the house. So he says maybe the Kettlemans kidnapped themselves, and the cop says that Jimmy's done. And Jimmy says they stole a pile of loot, but they can't run or they'll look guilty. And he says that they staged it so they would look kidnapped, which is honestly very smart. I can understand that totally. I mean, it's a really smart what they did there, and I think that was really good that Jimmy figured that out. I was very happy that Jimmy figured that out. And he says they need to get the word out, and says they are likely already in Mexico. And one of the cops said their cars are here and they didn't call a cab. They say maybe the bad guy let her take the doll, and he takes Kim outside to talk in private. And he says how he called the Kettlemans and warned them that someone is coming. He says he broke pledge with Nacho to warn them, and he says that was an unintended consequence, and he says they have to find them and get the cops to let Nacho go. And he says Nacho didn't kidnap them but is a bad guy. And he says if the cops find something else on Nacho, he'll turn him into a meat pinata. And I love that he said that, because it's true. Nacho's gonna mess him up, totally. He's gonna mess him up. So he says they need to convince the cops to catch the Kettlemans on the run, because he thinks that the Kettlemans are the ones at fault here, which honestly is plausible. I can understand that. I really do understand where Jimmy's coming from when he says that the Kettlemans are the bad ones. I can definitely understand that. So he says they're not masterminds and will be caught, and he asks him to tell the cops and the FBI to look for the Kettlemans as a fight, not a kidnapping. And Jimmy says Hamlin could convince the FBI. She says Hamlin will never agree since they're clients, and Hamlin, basically he then walks off and says he's going to try and get Nacho to see reason. And he pulls up to the parking lot, pushes the button for a ticket, but it doesn't come out. And he tells Mike that he was a jerk and will pay what he owes plus interest if he lets him come through. And Mike tells him to find parking somewhere else, because of course, the whole thing last week with him looking for a parking space and him just arguing with him about that was priceless. So I'd love that we get a follow-up to that this week. That was great to see. And he tells him it's not his concern. Jimmy says he doesn't have time for this. A car pulls up behind Jimmy and honks. And I just love this relationship between Jimmy and Mike. It's so funny to see. But we actually do see something about Mike in this episode, because Jimmy gets out of his car, so he's going to park right there. He calls Mike a geezer. Mike slams in the ground, twists his arm. I honestly feel like I thought Mike was just going to, beat him up, and, I really thought something bad was going to happen to him in that scene, really. But I really like Mike's character. Again, I didn't see Breaking Bad, so I really can't say much about Mike's character, but I do have to say that he definitely is the kind of character that will kick your ass if you double-cross him and insult him, basically. So the two cops talk to Mike about the Kettlemans and says Jimmy has a theory that the Kettlemans are on the run. They asked Mike to make Jimmy talk, and the cop said that Jimmy assaulted Mike, but he'll let him go if they help him out. And Jimmy says Nacho is Nacho Man. He said the Kettlemans took themselves, and Mike says he changed his mind and won't press charges. And the cops ask what he's doing, and one says Mike is pussying out. He says he guesses that's his loss and walks off. So Jimmy calls him Cagney and Lacey and says he'll take an edible arrangement once they realize they were wrong. And Jimmy's chasing Mike down and asks why he let him off the hook. He says he knows Mike has no... I have to say, I like the montage sequence here. This was a montage sequence I enjoyed overall. Not as good as last week's, but I still really enjoyed it. And he says he knows Mike has no heart, then says he knows why he did it. It's because he believes in him. And I really like seeing that, actually. I like seeing that because you can definitely tell that there was something about Mike. There's something with him and Jimmy. We didn't know what it was, but really now it just seems like he just really wants Jimmy to succeed and be a good lawyer. And he wants him to be successful, and he believes in him. And I like seeing that with Mike, because Mike's really one of the only people that's actually been nice to Jimmy, because everyone else has called Jimmy out and say he's an idiot, and he has no idea what he's talking about and things like that. Mike really is the first person to be straight up with him and tell him that, yeah, I do actually trust you. And I like seeing that with Mike. I thought that was really well done overall, and I definitely really enjoyed those scenes between Mike and Jimmy. I thought they were really well done. I definitely really enjoyed that. So Mike says basically that he believes Jimmy, and Jimmy's thrilled someone does, and Mike says he heard the details and agrees. He asks Mike how he thinks they travel, and Mike says they didn't leave the neighborhood. He talks about a case when he was a cop back up north, and he says a bookie skipped town with a $6 million. And he says everyone thought he was on the beach, but he was hiding two doors down in a foreclosed house and laid low for 6 months. So Mike says that it's human nature to stay close to home, and he says no one wants to leave home. Jimmy's thinking about this, and then he heads back to see the Kettlemans. He looks around the neighborhood, sees a tent back of their house, and then goes out a gate in their backyard, walks into the foothills behind their house. He keeps going, takes off his jacket because of the heat. He's hot and sweaty, makes it to a wood area, dumps sand out of his shoes, looks around. It's dusk now, and he finally hears them. They're singing bingo in the tent. So yeah, his theory was true. They got away, and he sits down, dials his cell phone. He holds out the phone and says, listen to this. He says, I found your dumbass clients, and says he's bringing them back to the house, but it will take a couple of hours. And they're not listening to him. He unzips the tent, and I love it. He just here's Johnny. That was hilarious to see that Shining reference. I absolutely love it. Thought that was hilarious. and Jimmy says they're going to pack up and head back to their house. Betsy has to talk about it because she has no idea what's going on. I mean, this is just coming out of nowhere, and Jimmy says that they go to the cops or where they will drag them out by their heels, and Betsy fights Jimmy when he picks up a tote bag, rips and stacks of cash scatter the ground, and Jimmy says, yeah. So how did Jimmy get this money? I have no idea how he got this money. But clearly Jimmy had this money and he knows that there's something else going on here. So it's going to be interesting to see how he got this money and everything. And I'm very interested in seeing what else is going on between Betsy and uh, Craig. I definitely like their characters overall. Now, I definitely want to talk about Chuck in this episode. Chuck is a very interesting character. Do you think that Chuck had to sacrifice his job to get Jimmy out of jail? I could definitely think that's a possibility because we know that Chuck is not working anymore and he's unemployed, and Jimmy told him that it's not, and he really doesn't have a very good relationship with Jimmy, so I definitely could see that being a possibility. Kim being a rape victim, I don't know about that, but it definitely could make sense. I mean, that could be why Kim doesn't trust him. I gotta say, I really am liking Mike's character, though. I really love how he trusts Jimmy and he wants him to succeed at this. I think that's a very well done scene overall. I actually am really enjoying their relationship. It's one of the most enjoyable parts of the show, in my opinion. I really did enjoy it overall. Oakley and Jimmy. Is Jimmy the guy that Oakley did Jimmy really do what Oakley says he did? Because Oakley right now trusts him, but I definitely feel like Jimmy's just trying to cover himself up. Also, do you think he's using a fake identity? I kind of feel like he is. I don't know why. That scene with the driver's license and they said that it wasn't his just really seems suspicious to me. And it's really interesting what's going on there. But overall, guys, love this episode. I'm really liking this show overall, I have to say. I like Nacho's character. Is Jimmy going to be able to prove that Nacho's innocent and that Betsy and Craig are at fault? What's he going to do with them? We're going to have to see what happens there. I definitely feel like this is going to be a case that goes on for a while, and I like that because I like this case overall. It's really interesting, and I'm definitely very invested, and I'm really enjoying the show overall. But again, guys, that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be for another movie review, which I'm going to warn you guys for an epic rant. You guys probably are not going to like. You're going to be like, why do you hate on this movie? All these people in my school are telling me it's a great movie, and no, it's not. I'm going to talk to you guys about why it's a terrible movie, but I'll see you guys for that video. Okay, bye.